So I got the final drive out of the bike. It's pretty grimy. It's been leaking. Over a long period of time, we're going to replace all the seals and clean it up before we put it back in the bike. The drive splines, as you can see here, is kind of the Achilles heel of the older Boxers. These wear out to the point where they'll shear eventually, but these are still in pretty good shape. They're about halfway worn, and we're just going to run it the way it is. It'll be fine for what we do. We'll probably go ahead and do the repairs to it once we fully restore the bike later on. And when that time comes, what that's going to entail is installing the Siebenrock spline repair. It's basically this whole shaft with the splines. You essentially grind off the original weld, push the old part out of the ring gear, push the new part in, and then weld it up. And it's a perfect repair. And so there'll be more information on that later, but that's an option that you have if you find that your splines are just too worn. But let's get back to just what we're doing now, and that is to replace the seals. And first I'm going to give this a nice thorough cleaning in the solvent tank. Okay, so I got it fairly clean, and it's time to start taking it apart. Now, here's a tool you can make to make it a lot easier to work on the final drive. It's just a piece of flat steel. I used a hole saw, 2 5/8 inch diameter, to make this big hole and the 4 holes here. And then I can basically bolt this on here, put that in the vise. Makes it real easy to work on. Okay, so now I have attached this tool that I made to the final drive, and I'm just about ready to put it in the vise. But first, I need to remove this brake actuation arm. Now, you want to make sure that this is indexed properly so that it goes back the same way that it came apart. Sometimes one of these has already been apart and somebody already beat you to it. So always check and see, but this one doesn't look like it's been done before. So I'm just going to take a scribe and scribe a little line right there so that I can see when I put it back together. Or you can use a center punch or whatever you want to do. All right, I'm going to take the output shaft cover off first and to remove all the nuts. So I've removed all the nuts from the cover plate, and there's these 2 flanges on here, as you can see, and those are tapped for M5. If you have a couple of 5mm bolts laying around, screw those in, and then just need to tighten each one a little bit at a time to break the seal and remove the cover. Okay, here it comes, and voila, there's the ring gear. So I'll take these bolts back out again. And then you can support this with one hand while you take a mallet and give it a few taps. And that'll drive it right out of the housing, just like so. Now there's a shim here. You want to make sure that stays in place and it didn't stick to the cover. I'm going to be cleaning this off. I have to scrape the gasket, remove the seal, clean out all that debris in here, get it all clean, ready for reassembly. So it's easy enough to do, just have to get a little bite of it and tap it out. That's it. And now it's back to cleaning. Okay, to replace this outer seal, I'm gonna have to heat the housing up to get the bearing out and this bushing, the sleeve. First I'll take this thrust washer out and lay it onto the final drive in the same position. And now I'm going to turn the final drive around to work on the other end. Okay, so we're gonna heat the housing up really hot, and you'll know it's hot enough when the bearing falls out. That's about your key. And then this, you'll have to drive out of there, probably give it a few taps with a tool. We made something like this on a lathe. You could use a socket, whatever. Okay, she's getting pretty hot now. I'm going to go ahead and remove that sleeve from the center using the drift that I showed earlier. There we go. Okay, now it's even hotter. So I'll take a scribe and reach down in here and just kind of poke at it and see. And all right, it's already moving. What I'm trying to do is get the bearing out without damaging it so that I can reuse it again and don't have that expense. So it's going to come out right now here. Give it a little help. Screwdriver, a couple late taps. Oh, here it comes. Man, that thing's hot. Whew, baby. But it's out. And it didn't get damaged at all. We can totally reuse that. Okay, so now turn the final drive around one more time. And now you can see the seal right there. That's the one we're going to replace. And you can also see here is a little weep hole, and it's probably plugged. We need to make sure to clean that out. The reason for this weep hole is if oil goes past that seal, the idea is that it will run out and let you know that it's leaking. And yeah, they always plug up. Okay, so now let's take that seal out and replace it. It's a good thing to do while the case is still nice and warm. So I'm just using a real standard kind of seal puller. I'm going to get in here and hook that seal, but be careful. You want to pry against this little recess here, not against the bearing surface area. You don't want to mar that. So set that in there carefully, get a good bite on it, and with a little luck, it comes right out. There we go. There it is. Okay, so now we're going to clean this area out. And I'm just using a small Allen wrench, piece of welding rod, whatever you have. Make sure that that weep hole is clear. This one looks okay. Okay. Okay, now it's going to put the new seal in. Now I got the old one out. The spring side goes up. Remember that, and just using a standard bearing driver, I'm going to tap it into place. Okay, perfect. Okay, then we're going to heat this up a little bit more again to put the bearing back in. Perfect. Okay, so I had the bearing in the freezer for a few minutes to cool it off, and should just fall right into place. Well, it needs a little bit of help. No problem. Maybe we didn't have it in long enough. There we go. Okay, perfecto. And now we'll put this piece back in. and that seal is replaced. Now we'll move on to the pinion. To replace the pinion shaft seals, you need to remove this nut, and here's another special tool that you may need to make. This one's a little bit more complicated. Basically, out of an old drive shaft that was worn out, we took the donor here, or actually the bell coupling, and basically cut that part off and welded it to a piece of flat bar. And so that fits right in here, locks the pinion in, and now I can remove the nut without it spinning. So this is something you can make. You just need to find an old broken drive shaft and get that part of it, and then it's a tool that you'll have forever. Okay, so now 24mm socket, and take that off. So the nut, washer, and there's a seal ring in there too. Now you have to remove the pinion, couple screwdrivers. It's usually all it takes. The seal's just deteriorated into mush. So now there's a seal in here, and here you'll need another special tool. There's something that we also offer. It's this pin wrench. It'll fit right inside here, locate into those pins, and you'll be able to unscrew the color that's in there. Okay, now drive the seal out of the ring. We'll just swap this out real quick. Put the new one in. Okay, to put the new seal in, you'll need to come up with a socket or some sort of driver. There we go. Okay, clean the threads out, and now we can reinstall this with the new sealing installed. Okay, the ring needs to be torqued. Always refer to your manual. This one needs a 100 to 120 newton meters, so we'll split the difference and do 110. Cool. Okay, now the pinion goes back in. And that seal that was like mush coming out used to look like this. Chances are you wouldn't be able to identify it for what comes out of there. So that's what it looks like, and it goes right in this little groove here, like that. Washer and the nut. Okay, now we need this tool again to hold the pinion. Torque to 100 newton meters. Okay, we're about ready to wrap this up now. This is the housing cover that we've cleaned really thoroughly. And this one has also got a weep hole in it, which is really pretty important. You want to make sure that that is not plugged up. This one's more important than anything else because it's designed in such a way that if the seal fails, that the oil will drip out instead of contaminating the brakes. So you want to make sure that that's clean. And then we're going to put the new seal in. And this has to be pressed in. There's actually, of course, a special tool for that too, but nobody has that. So we just use a standard bearing driver set to tap the seal into place. Okay, just want to make sure that it's not sticking up past this surface here. Has to be driven in just a little bit deeper. Yeah, so you want to just run your finger around there and make sure that it's not protruding and that it's evenly placed all the way around. That looks good. Okay, so now the shim that came out goes back in here like so. Take the thrust washer that came out of there, make sure that the bearing is clean and that the thrust washer is clean and that it goes in the right way, the way it came out. And then the ring gear, we've cleaned the splines off of it and it's all squeaky clean. So we can go ahead and put that back in place. Just like so. And then the cover shim that came out of there. Put a little bit of grease on here to hold it in place and lay the shim right there where it belongs. And now we also cleaned the gasket surface area, so now we can put the new gasket in place. The next thing is going to be to heat this up and then push the cover into its spot. As you can see, the teeth are pretty sharp on the drive spline. When you slide the seal over that, you would probably damage the seal, or you could run the risk of doing so. Of course, BMW has a special tool for that. It looks like this. It fits inside the seal, then that fits over the splines, and then the cover goes over the splines without getting damaged. Probably don't have one of those, but you probably do have one of these, a soda can or a beer can. The regular 12-ounce size fits very well right over those splines, just like the original tool. And so all you got to do is push this into the seal, like so. Put the blunt end through, just like that. And then once we get this up to top temperature, we're going to be able to slide that right over the splines and poop right into place. So we're heating this up to expand the casting so that it'll slip over the bearing and make it possible to assemble without a bunch of excessive beating with a hammer. If we get this nice and warm, it should just slip right on like a glove. Okay. Alrighty, I think it's hot enough. Now I'm going to line up my soda can. There we go. And push this right into place. Bam. Oh, cool. Went out nicely. Now just a couple little taps. Make sure it's on all the way. Cool. A couple of nuts on here, and then we'll pull the can out. There we go. No damage to the seal. Now just going to put all the washers and nuts back on, torque everything to specification, and we've resealed the final drive. I hope this has been an informational video that you could benefit from, and hope you check with us again.